I'm Tim Burton. I drew from the very beginning, and then what seemed to happen is as you went through school, you know, teachers say, oh, you shouldn't draw like this, you should draw like that. So by the time kids got about like 10 years old, they could think they couldn't draw. Even if somebody was telling me I couldn't draw, I still liked doing it. I was lucky enough to have a teacher who didn't try to force me to draw a certain way. She encouraged people to sort of, you know, whatever sort of strength they had to kind of go with it and kind of do their own style or do their own spirit of work. And it also was a way of exploring your fantasy life and your, you know, emotional core. So it's always been an important part of my life. Well, I haven't really shown any of this stuff. I never really considered it like art or artwork, mainly because it was not really meant to be seen, really. I mean, it was all sort of the process I was doing when I was either thinking of ideas or working on projects or just helping my own mental process. One of the things I love about what MoMA is doing is that it's not a categorization, and it's not just film stuff or drawing stuff. They've done a really good job of trying to blur those lines of what those things are. All these kind of things, whether photographs or little writings or sketches, for me are the most important part of any project. I mean, because once I'm doing it, like when I have to communicate with people, it's not easy for me. So the important work has to be done like in these little private projects. Well, going through all the artwork that I hadn't been through before, it really has re-energized me. There's something about that that kind of reconnects you to the world and who you are and what you've done and what you want to do. It's not till I look back that I kind of realize that I kind of obsessed with a certain thematic thing in a way. A lot of it, I think, has to do with your upbringing, your background, and how you felt as a child or as a young adult. And you know, that sort of feeling of isolation and being alone, or you know, and being inside your own head or your own mind has always been something that I felt very strongly. So that sort of connection with people that don't quite fit into society. The word normal always scared me because that indicated something that was quite subversively terrifying in some way. Again, growing up on monster movies where that was the dynamic in each and every one of those, where the monster was sort of the outcast of, and the people were much more of the sort of villainous element to it. That's always been important to me, and I can't seem to get rid of it. When I was an animator at Disney, I was much weirder than I am now at that time. I found that when I wore striped socks, I felt more grounded. It's a very strange circular dynamic because I was feeling very crazy or very floaty or whatever, and when I started wearing striped socks I just felt calmer and more grounded, and so I don't really know what else to say about that one. I'm always amazed at how certain images freak out adults when in fact it was something that was very much a part of probably their childhood and every other. And that's what fairy tales, I always felt, did for me, is that they're quite frightening, abstract stories, and children relate to them because it represents the abstract of life and how you know, how am I going to deal with something I don't really understand, and, you know, all these weird, horrible images that are, I think, crucial to childhood, and yet I think people kind of forget, some people forget as they get older. What I was really responded to in movies was German expressionism. There was just something about the dynamics and the shapes, with the shadows and the light and dark, and you know, like Fritz Lang and those kind of, you know, or George Méliès, you know, those old films that really captured a spirit and a feeling of like being in a dreamscape or inside of somebody's mind was something that was very strong to me. Well, if I was alone on a desert island, I'd pick something that I could relate to. Probably The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. I don't know why that's one of my favorite movies, but it is. Just being alone, pretending I was Charlton, that sounds pretty scary, but that's one that comes to mind. For something like Alice in Wonderland, I mean, it's not something that I necessarily kept, like, from as a child, saying, I have to make Alice in Wonderland. Although It certainly follows with themes and images. It will have a lot of things in it that I would still use it on a completely personal project. I mean, a kind of fairy tale fable image, sort of symbolic imagery that say something like Scissorhands has for me, but something like Alice has it as well. It's just, you know, it's just a known entity. Same thing with Batman. I wasn't really a comic book hardcore fan. I just really like that world and that character and those characters in that. So, you know, just something that kind of hidden quality and kind of wanting to hide personality. Obviously something well known, but something felt personal to me. The tools of filmmaking have changed over the years, obviously. I mean, I try to keep the same approach where you try to keep it as hands-on and handmade and homemade as you can, because I just feel like that is something that I always, you know, I liked having actors and sets and having limitations that you have to deal with. That's what makes it fun. Now, with so much technology at your disposal, it can get a bit overwhelming, and it's almost like the reverse of what I've been used to. But, you know, knowing that, you still try to keep it as human and as tactile and as you know, present as you can. But it's difficult with, you know, shooting in a vacuum. Oftentimes people aren't even shooting in the same shot with each other. And having been through it and being able to have the joy of feeling the texture of a set and seeing an actor dealing in that light and set, you know, it's something that stays with you. So I try to keep that spirit.